Hey everybody, welcome to this month's installment of the Slagel Show. It's a special one this month. In studio, we've got Tabor this month. He's going to be hanging out with us. We're going to be talking about all of his new projects, which of course include the King's X record, Platypus, his solo stuff, et al. But to begin everything this month, we're going to play a little Diamond Head, kind of a rollover from last month's show. This is Diamond Head with the Prince. You just heard Platypus with a brand new song that was called Oh God. Before that, we heard Diamond Head's The Prince, some classic old new wave of British heavy metal. Now, this month, I'm happy to welcome to our lovely little show here Mr. Tabor from King's X. What's up, Ty?
Oh, well, you. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. So tell us, we just heard something new from Platypus, a song called Oh God. Give us a little rundown on what's going on with that.
Well, that is an album that just got released, or is early March is released, and that's the second album of Platypus. That's me, John My Young from Dream Theater, Derek Sherinian of Planet X, Rod Morgenstein of many wonderful bands, and the project that we do. And it's our second album. Just finished it. Real happy with it, and hopefully it's in stores everywhere by now.
A super group, so to speak.
Well, a fun one to play in, that's for sure.
How did that whole thing come about? Like, whose idea was it? How did you guys all get together to do it?
I think it was originally John My Young's idea. He found himself. The other members of Dream Theater seemed to all be doing a lot of projects, and they had, in his off time, he thought he wanted to do something like that too. So he pretty much contacted us all, and I said I'd love to, especially when I heard Rod was involved too, because I was a big Dixie Dregs fan. I thought it'd be great to play with Rod, and it turned out to just be something where all four of us have such a good time doing it that we decided to keep it together and keep making albums as long as we can. So it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. I think that's one kind of cool thing that's happened in the 90s is a lot of musicians are doing side projects and different projects with different musicians. And for me, being a music fan, it's a lot of fun. And I would assume from your end, being the musician, it's got to be that way as well.
It sure is. I mean, it's a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Every side project type of thing that I've been invited to do that I have done has been something very fun. And this to be like almost like a real band, with an actual record deal, making albums, and it's like these guys that I never would have imagined getting to play with, and we just have a blast together. It's just totally fun.
Now, do you think there's any time in the future you guys might be able to do some tour dates or some live shows? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, we talk about it, and everybody would very much like to. As you can imagine, scheduling's a little tough because everybody's in a different band, but it is definitely something we want to do and that the record company we're with wants to do too.
Cool. Well, there was one of the new tracks. If you guys are fans of any of the bands on there, you should check it out. Now we're going to play something from Ty's buddies and Houston mates. This is Galactic Cowboys with Feel the Rage. That was Kiss with Rocket Ride. Before that, we heard Galactic Cowboys, Feel the Rage. Tabor from King's X is hanging out with us this month, and he personally selected Rocket Ride by Kiss. What brought that on?
Well, I was just trying to think of some of my favorite things about Kiss when I was growing up. Rocket Ride stuck out as just a really cool guitar riff that I had to learn immediately, and it's one of the hardest rocking tunes to me that they ever did. So I just thought we'd listen to it.
I love that song. Now, we were talking last night, we were talking about some Kiss stories, about different encounters with them, and you've had a couple over the years. You care to share one of those with us, maybe?
Well, boy, I don't know what to say about that other than I had the great privilege of getting to speak with Gene Simmons more than once, and that in and of itself is truly an experience when you pick up the phone and hear Gene Simmons' voice on the other side. It's like being in some strange Twilight Zone episode. But we were almost involved in the Kiss My Ass album project, and I had discussions with Gene about us doing something for that record. It didn't pan out, but it was very nice that they wanted us to do it, and we did want to do it. It just didn't work out.
And before that, of course, we heard some Galactic Cowboy stuff, and they're obviously friends of yours. Where did you guys all meet? I mean, obviously you're from Houston. Did you meet in the scene in Houston, or was it some other way?
Well, actually, some of us met in Missouri because King's X originally formed in Springfield, Missouri, and at that time, Alan Doss and Monty Colvin both were up in Missouri also. And we knew them back then from early 80s, being in other bands or just being friends that we hung out with. And so we've known them a long time. They were good friends of ours. And matter of fact, David Olerking also, who Monty and Alan used to play with before Galactic Cowboys with The Awful Truth, David was also from Missouri, so all of those guys, we knew them. And they ended up in Houston for one reason or another, like we did. And we've remained friends, all of us guys in the Cowboys. We, especially me and the guys in the Cowboys that live in Houston still, we see each other pretty regularly.
Now, how is it that all these people from Springfield, Missouri ended up in Houston? Did you guys caravan down there? Or
no, we moved at different times, actually, and including Atomic Opera. Frank Hart was from up there also, and he ended up moving to Houston. And a whole lot of other people, too. A lot of other musicians have moved down from Missouri to Houston that were friends of ours. But originally what happened is King's X, we were going under a different name in the early years, and we were asked as a favor by a record company in Houston called Star Song Records if we would come down and help one of their solo artists write music for and record a rock record. And the trade-off was during that time we could be going in the studio with our own music and shopping deals, and they were going to try to help us out and everything. It was just a trade kind of thing, and that was originally what got us down there. What got Monty and Alan down was basically sort of filling in for when we quit doing that for that artist. They came down and sort of took over the job, and so did David Olerking, as a matter of fact, from Awful Truth. And Frank Hart ended up coming down just because all the musicians he knew had moved down, and he decided to see what it was going to be like down there too. So, and it, just sort of, we brought the whole Missouri community to Houston, and we all knew each other, and that's all we knew. We didn't really know anybody in Houston, and we certainly didn't fit into the Houston scene, but we just sort of had our own group, and between all three groups, we ended up with record deals and albums and stuff, and really got fortunate.
Now, you guys have a really unique sound with King's X, and some people when you guys first came out said it's something about a Houston sound, which I don't necessarily know that I agree with, but it is a unique sound. Obviously, you've influenced so many huge acts, and so many people look to you guys as an influence. When you first got together, was there any sort of plan as to what you wanted to do? Did you want to be unique, or was it just something that kind of fell together?
Well, when the band was originally formed, it was 1980, believe it or not, and when I listen back to tapes of our demos from back then, I realize now that we did start out being something really strangely different. And it was always a goal of ours to be different, but I think we didn't realize we were different when we were. And so we started trying to work on being different, trying to, work on being not the same old thing. And the more we did that, I think over the years, the more we became like everything else. Instead of something original, because we were trying too hard and trying different combinations of influences or whatever. And basically what it came down to is during the period when we moved to Houston and we had a lot of time on our hands to write music and stuff, we all started experimenting. And I recorded a song for myself with one of my best friends at the time, Dale Richardson. We put a song together called Pleiades, and it was just something that was experimental. And we knew it really didn't fit the rule book for songwriting in any way, but it didn't matter. It was just free-form writing, and it was one of the first songs I'd ever written like that where I was very happy with it, and it didn't fit at all what I thought a song should be. And so I played it for Doug and Jerry on an airplane one day, and they both were just stunned at the song and totally into it. And we talked about the whole idea of writing for ourselves then, instead of trying to follow a song format or trying to make hit records or whatever. Just start writing music that we love, whatever that is. And that was sort of when things turned around for us, and we quit trying to be original. We just started doing whatever we like, period, whatever it is. And that's when we gelled into a sound that we couldn't have predicted or tried to do. I mean, couldn't made it happen, thinking about it.
And where did the harmonies come in? Because it's something that I think a lot of people go back to, and certainly me being a big King's X fan is something that I think is really unique, is you have three guys that can sing, but you have a real unique harmony when you use that. Like, did that come in? Did you think, like, we want to do that sort of thing? Or was it just, hey, we can all sing and it sounds cool together?
Well, we had always had some harmonies in what we were doing, but we never really pushed ourselves in that area. For one thing, I always hated to sing, and I was usually the first guy singing harmony, so I did as little of it as I could get away with. But what happened is, originally, I have to give credit to our manager we had at the time we got a record deal, Sam Taylor, because he recognized that we all three were big fans of vocals, and of harmonies, Beatles and whatever. A lot of our influences were really great vocal type things, like Sly and the Family Stone, too, for Doug. And so Sam just, I think, helped make us work at using the voices we had and trying to do something with it, because we'd always been lazy in that area. And so I have to give him credit for that, because we all did want vocals, we just didn't want to have to work, and he sort of made us work. And once we got into the groove of that, we saw we could do it, then we got into it, and just kind of kept doing it.
Very cool. Well, since you mentioned Pleiades, which is one of my all-time favorite King's X songs, I feel we should probably give that one a spin here. So here we go. King's X with Pleiades. We just heard another request from Mr. Ty Tabor, who's hanging out with us this month. That was Woman from Tokyo, Deep Purple, some classic stuff. And before that, we heard Pleiades by King's X. Now, you guys have a new record that's coming out in May. Give us a little info on that one.
Well, it's our second Metal Blade record, and we we just finished it, and it's really hard for me to put into words or whatever, describe it, but it's yet another slight variation on for the band, a different turn. It's we don't have anything that I can point to in the past of other records to compare it to. It's a different record, very different for us.
Well, wasn't it, I think you guys recorded it a little bit different than you've done other records too, haven't you?
Well, we recorded it the same way we did Tapehead, actually. And what we did is, with Tapehead, we just went in and basically wrote the songs on the spot for the most part and recorded them as we wrote them. And we enjoyed doing that so much that this time we intentionally didn't bring any song ideas in whatsoever, and we did everything completely from scratch together in the studio and then recorded it. And it, once again, was probably the most enjoyable time we've ever had making an album together, and also the most fulfilling for all of us, where we all three were extremely happy with what came out, and that it's a good representation of all of us. And usually when we all three put our ideas into it and we all three work, it turns out to be something that none of us saw coming, and that's always a real fun thing to see happen.
Well, was it a little different, too, for you because there weren't any outside influences at all? Like, there was nobody... it was pretty much just you three in the studio.
Yeah, it was
doing whatever came out. There was no producers or, record company weasels like me saying, do this, do that. None of that stuff, right?
Right. I mean, that's the way we work. We three go in, and I actually run the console and do the recording and engineering, and it's just us three. No outside influences or distractions, and we work reasonable days, you know what I mean, so that we don't get burnt out. Then we go home, we come back in still fresh the next day, and as long as we keep it fresh, it's a lot of fun, and we can get stuff done very fast. And we did the last two albums in a row much faster than usual, but at the same time we worked more on the music, especially on the new one, than we had in a while.
Now, the album title is Please Come Home, Mr. Bulbous. Now, what exactly does that mean, and why is that the name of your album?
Well, I don't think that I can give you a meaning that's going to matter at all. I think basically it was just an album title. Believe it or not, it was just an album title that's been running around my head for years, and I kept saying it over and over as a joke kind of through the years, and everybody would, kind of laugh and everything. And this time around, Doug said, "Man, why don't we call an album Mr. Bulbous, finally do it?" And I said, "Well, what the heck, I dig it." So we just came up with this whole kind of insane concept of what a Mr. Bulbous album would be, and I came up with a cover myself, which is really almost evil looking, even though you can't figure out what it is about it that is. It's just really strange, but it's odd. It's an odd name, a very odd cover, and odd songs and odd lyrics on the record, and it just perfectly fit what went on this time, because it's definitely lyrically nothing like anything we've ever done before. It explores some strange things from insanity to bad dreams to whatever, and it's definitely a bizarre turn for us.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think, for me, the record is quite a bit different than Tapehead, but I think it's cool because it's more, I hate to say musical, but there's more, there's different parts to each song, and it's kind of not the usual song structure that you would expect from anybody. And that's what really is really exciting to me. Like, the more I listen to it, the more I really like it. So, cool. Sadly, you guys are going to have to wait a while. We are going to play a world premiere of one of the new songs in a minute, so you'll have to wait until about a month. It comes out in May to check it out. But it's King's X. I mean, if you like King's X, you'll like it. If you don't like King's X, buy it, you'll like it, no problem. But, you go back to the cover, and to me it reminds me a lot of like the old Hypnosis covers, like the old UFO covers and all the Hypnosis stuff. It's kind of got that sort of a vibe to it.
Yeah, I guess it does. Just a little bit of strangeness, and it's simple but strange. It just gives you a weird feeling.
And what are the tour plans so far?
Well, at the moment we're going to Europe at the end of May, and we'll be there till July. And shortly after that, we'll be kicking it back up in America and doing another good extensive tour on this album, because the momentum from last year, the biggest tour in the history of the band in Europe and America as far as turnout across the country, we just want to get back out and keep it going because it was just a phenomenal year for us last year.
That was good. And how many smart cars are you going to rent this time in Europe?
It depends on how many days off we have. We love those things.
For those of you that don't know, those of you that aren't in Europe, a smart car is about the size of a shoebox.
No kidding.
And you throw a couple of wheels on it, and you drive it around.
Yeah.
What is it like to drive that thing?
It actually feels like you're in a normal-sized car.
Really?
Which is really bizarre. You get out, or if you pass a glass window that you can see yourself in, you just bust out laughing because it looks like a cartoon. I mean, literally, we drive up and down streets in Europe where they're used to small cars, and we drive up and down streets, and we would turn around and see people all over the place on the sidewalks pointing and laughing and, just cracking up, because it's one of the funniest looking things you've ever seen, especially at 130 kilometers,
That thing goes that fast?
Well, we got passed while we were doing 130 kilometers. We got passed like we were sitting still by another one.
Really?
Yeah, so I guess they will move.
That's unbelievable. That's kind of scary. So the next thing that you picked out to play is Trapeze. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background onto why you picked it?
Well, the album "You Are the Music, We're Just the Band" is by Trapeze was a big influential guitar album for me. I heard that when I was in high school, and just the super tight. And really unique style of guitar on that record just had a huge impact on me. And I always thought it was one of the best rock and roll albums I had ever heard. I still to this day think it is. It just had a big influence on me and other people I knew that were aware of the album. It had the same effect on. It just wasn't widely known. But those of us that did hear it, we flipped out over it, and it's just always been a big influence.
Yeah, I think all those early Trapeze records were pretty classic. They were much more popular over in Europe than they ever were over here, but they had a little bit of a segment of population that were into it. Yeah, apparently in Missouri.
Yeah, in certain spots, actually more like Texas. Texas, they were kind of big.
That's true. Well, they had great radio down in Texas, so I think that really helped. So without further ado, Mr. Ty Tabor's picked some Trapeze, and that's what you're going to hear right now. And after the Trapeze song, stay tuned because you're going to hear a brand new song from King's X. Right there was the world premiere song from the brand new King's X record called Please Come Home, Mr. Bulbous. That song was Smudge.
Yes.
And Mr. Ty Tabor's hanging out with us this month. What do you have to say about Smudge?
Smudge is a bizarre song. Definitely a bizarre song. Lyrically, it is all three, me, Doug, and Jerry, it is put to music some of our worst nightmares as a kid. And it's just a really disturbing song.
Cool. I like that. So on the process of this record, did each of you, is there any song that like one person wrote and then the other guys just chimed in, or is there anything that you wrote specifically, or was it really just all three of you together writing?
It was all three of us. I mean, not anything was written without all three sitting there with instruments, and like sometimes maybe it might be a guitar riff, sometimes a bass riff, or just a drum beat that gets us started, pointed in a certain direction, and everybody chimes in and works on it.
So were you actually, did you go into a rehearsal studio first and work out the songs, or you're actually in the recording studio working it?
We went into the studio and just went ahead and mic'd up everything, got everything sounding the way we wanted it, then started writing music. And at any moment that we wanted to lay a rhythm track down, we would just stop and do it.
So was there anything that literally you wrote and it ended up on tape in 2 minutes and it ended up on the record?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of them were first take kind of things. Yeah, no doubt. Most guitars and bass, we would go back and overdub and whatever. But even some of the original bass, when we just went in and played it, was kept. A lot of it was, as a matter of fact. And a lot of the guitar would have, except that we wanted to make it stereo and do some other weird effects with guitars, so I redid guitars. But everything was put down as a take that could have been left alone.
So I'm fascinated by the process because it's kind of unique as to what most bands will do is they'll go and they'll demo some stuff, or they'll go into a rehearsal studio and write it. It's very rare that you get a band that just for an entire record would go into the studio and just say, okay, let's start recording, press record, and let's write a song.
Well, it's something that a few years ago I probably would have been scared to death to try to do myself, but I was sort of forced into a situation the first time I did an album with the guys in Platypus. We had never played together before, and here we were with a record deal and, a certain amount of time to make an album, period. So we got together, and we were under a real crunch. And what happened is it turned out to be so much fun writing together from scratch and such a creative process with other people, in other words, when you write by yourself, you carry the whole weight. You agonize over each, part and everything and try to make everything right. Well, it actually relieves you of that when you're working in a situation where everybody's contributing, because you might have an idea and it might be the end of your idea, but somebody else it inspires to go somewhere else with, which in turn inspires you again. And what happens is when you get a bunch of people together doing that, there is no lack of musical ideas. If anything, there are too many choices almost, which makes it a really fun writing situation. But I had never experienced that, like I said, until Platypus, and we were forced to be in that position. And it just so happened Doug was involved in a project at the exact same time with Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam and Robbie from Tribe After Tribe. And it was just a strange side project they did where they kind of wrote on the spot also. And he was inspired when he came back from that, and I came back from Platypus, and we called each other up saying, man, we did this album where we just wrote everything on the spot. And he was like, man, we did the same thing. And we just said, man, we've got to try this in King's X because that was a blast. We have to try that. So since then, we've done 2 albums that way, and it's so much fun. I can't imagine doing it any other way at the moment.
Well, it certainly has worked out pretty well as far as I'm concerned, so some good stuff.
Cool.
Now, we should talk about your solo stuff, because you have one solo record called Moonflower Lane that's out, and you're currently working on another one that's coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping to finish it within the next 2 months, before we hit the road is the goal, and that's what I'm working on. Yeah, I've gone from one project to another right in a row. It's almost like a dream come true, though, because when I was a kid, I used to always dream of making albums, and now I'm almost year-round making albums, and that's a blast. I'm really happy about that.
Wasn't there a period of time where you guys were pretty much, you could only do King's X stuff, and there wasn't really a time or allowance to do anything else?
Well, there was a time where King's X did take up so much time, there was really no desire to do other things. Back in the days when we toured very extensively. And after that, though, we got kind of burnt out and had to start chilling out on the touring a little bit and give ourselves a life. And after a couple to 3 years of backing off from it some and getting a home life of some sort, I found myself getting real bored with too much time on my hands and wanted to get involved in other projects at that point, and have sort of just done one after another since then, basically. Doug also.
Yep. What was
Jerry also, too, by the way. Jerry has played on a whole lot of projects, too.
Yeah, everybody's doing all sorts of stuff, which is fun because you get to work with different people. And, I certainly think it's a great thing for you guys just creatively to do different stuff. But when did you... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to agree with you that that's the major plus to it, I think, for all of us, is that being involved in different projects has caused us to be more creative in each project because we aren't doing just one thing or one focus all the time, and because you get to move from one focus to another, you're fresh when you move to the other, and And we were getting real burnt out in King's X until we started trying some different things like that. And now we're having more fun again as a band.
Exactly, and like you mentioned earlier, you guys went off and did some projects where you had a different recording and writing process that you brought to the King's X fold, and it's kind of kick-started and brought some freshness to that, which I think is really cool. But what really, when you first sat down and decided you were going to do a solo record, what was the impetus? Why did you decide to do that? Is it something you've been thinking about for a long time, or it just kind of came up like, I want to do it?
I think I just, that was the first step toward doing something serious outside of King's X that wasn't just a one-off little project thing, one-day kind of event. And I think it was just time. After that many years of being in this band, I felt like I really needed to do something else. So that was the first step in that direction, was my first solo album. And that was before Platypus. And it was such a good process and such a eye-opening thing to get to be involved in something that was separate from King's X that was that serious. That was the beginning of it for me, that I decided I want to be involved in other projects and stuff, because it just was very good for me to do it. And but originally I think it was just a matter of being tired of the routine of tour, take a little bit of time off, King's X album, tour, a little bit of time. I mean, we had done it for year after year after year, and I just wanted something else in there, to change it up a bit.
More creative output.
Yeah.
So now the next track we're going to play is something else that Ty picked out. This is Alice Cooper. How did you get into Alice Cooper? Why did you pick this track?
Well, this doesn't really answer why I picked this track, but how I got into Alice Cooper was during summers. I had a best friend, a guy named John Long, in Jackson, Mississippi, actually Pearl, Mississippi. And during the summer, his parents would be working, and he'd be at home and at his house by himself every day, and I'd go over there and we'd hang out, and we were just best buddies. Well, we happened to find an 8-track of Love It to Death that his brother had just bought, his older brother, and we just happened to plug it in one day, and here we are, pretty young kids, we're not old enough to fully grasp what we heard, and it totally blew my mind. It was the most eye-opening experience of music in my life. The Beatles had been everything to me until then. When I heard the original Alice Cooper band, I just thought, oh my gosh, this is a whole different world that I never even thought of musically. It really affected me. So that's how I got into Alice Cooper. And then, of course, Killer. The Killer album is just such a classic. And this particular song that I picked out is You Drive Me Nervous, because for me it is, for the time that it came out, one of the most radical, almost punk, hardcore songs that existed when it came out, and it really slayed me when I heard it. I just thought it was super massively energetic and wild, for music of that time, and it affected me.
Did they ever come and play Mississippi? Did you ever get to see them?
Yes, they did, and I did get to see them. But when I saw Cooper, it was 75, and it was the first tour after leaving the original band. So, no, I didn't see the original band.
You saw Welcome to My Nightmare.
I saw Welcome to My Nightmare.
In Mississippi?
Yeah, in Jackson.
And what was there any public outcry that he was playing there? Or
Actually, none that I can remember at all.
Really?
It was a sold-out show. But in those days, I think I talked to you about this before. In those days, in the 70s, Jackson, Mississippi was an extremely hard-rocking city. The youth of that city totally revolved around a station called WZZQ, which was one of the most powerful stations in the South in the 70s. I used to drive all the way up into Arkansas and listen to that station at night from Jackson. And there were fans of the station in a 4-state area. It was a huge, important station to the kids in the 70s there. So the album rock of that and everything, it was a different world then. But, yeah, we got lots of shows. I was so lucky to get to see just about everybody that I ever wanted to see come through Jackson in that time. It's a different world there now. But lucky for me, when I was there, I got to see everything.
That's important. That's how people get influenced, that's for sure. Yeah. All right, well, here we go. This is another one that Ty picked. This is Alice Cooper, You Drive Me Nervous. You just heard You Drive Me Nervous by Alice Cooper. We're hanging out here with Ty Tabor from King's X. Ty, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure thus far. We're going to end everything today with a little Black Sabbath. Why don't you give us your background on how Black Sabbath influenced you?
Well, it was also around the same time that I first heard Alice Cooper, I guess, within a 2 or 3 year period of then, from the Love It to Death album. I was over at another friend's house, and Masters of Reality was an 8-track he had or whatever. It was the first. That was the first time I ever really heard a whole album by Black Sabbath. Because before, anytime I heard something by them, it was so unbelievably heavy that it scared me. I was just too young or something. You know what I mean? It was just really scary. But for some reason, that particular album just slayed me. I thought it was the most massive thing I'd ever heard, and so I got into Sabbath. I remember, as a kid learning to play guitar and trying to afford my first good amp and everything. The goal was always to get that massive of a sound, to get a Black Sabbath kind of guitar sound, because it was the measuring stick of the most massive guitars on earth at that time, and especially the Heaven and Hell album. And Ronnie James Dio at that point being in the band, who one of my all-time favorite vocalists. But the guitar sound in particular on that album was like another new step, a new level of massive guitars that I had never heard before. So I suggested maybe we listen to something off of that.
I think Sabbath really had one of the most, if not one of the most distinctive guitar sounds. I mean, so many people now from the 80s to the 90s have tried to copy that song, and it really that sound has really kind of used that sound as like the metal or the heavy guitar sound. Yeah, well, it definitely, like I said, was the measuring stick. There was nothing more heavy out there, and I couldn't even figure out how you could make something so heavy. It was just unbelievable. But I knew I always tried to get all of my amps to go to 11 to try to sound like Black Sabbath. Well, you guys tune down a lot too, don't you? Which kind of is they obviously have tuned down as well. Yeah. We started tapping into it when we started tuning down. We started getting more of what we had been looking for of that kind of a heavy, massive guitar thing. It kind of dirges along with a different vibe when you tune down, and so we just kind of got into that and started writing everything that way. That's why our whole first album was tuned down, basically. Cool. Now, we can't finish up here without talking to Ty about one of his favorite things and also one of my favorite things. That would be wine. Oh, yeah, so red wine. Red wine, exactly. You got to tell us, what's some of the best wine you've had recently, and should people come to shows bringing you bottles of wine? Absolutely, absolutely. It's the easiest way to get backstage. I have a bottle of wine. Bring a bottle of red wine, and you can meet the band. That's But actually, that does happen. I have a lot of people on the road who bring me red wine from really strange wineries, that I've never heard of before, people who work in them and things like that. So it's been amazing since the word got out that I collect red wine and really enjoy it, that a huge amount of red wine has come my way from fans and people. And I guess one of the best, you asked me what would be one of my favorite ones. One of my favorite American red wines ever, it was a 1994 Raymond Reserve. So if anybody can find that, they find gold, because it's pretty much nearly impossible to find. But just recently, somebody found 2 bottles for me. So that's where the tour laminate, right? That one. Yeah, that's a tour laminate and free merch and whatever else you need. Hang on the bus however long you want until we leave. And, What about the Bordeaux, though? You can't leave out the Bordeaux. Well, I am a huge fan of French wine, first and foremost, and, of course, the Bordeaux and Grave wines are awesome. Good man. I am of the same ilk with that one. So there you go. If you want to meet the band, bring Ty some red wine, some good Bordeaux, some good American wine, and you're in good shape. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for hanging out this month. It was a pleasure. Thank you. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Glad you could do it. And everybody, check out the King's X record, Please Come Home, Mr. Bulbous, which comes out in May, and also the Platypus record is out right now. Yeah. It's in stores, and look for Ty's solo record and probably several other projects from him in the future. But thanks again, Ty. We're going to end everything, like we said, with Black Sabbath. This is Heaven and Hell. See you guys next month.